Way down in.
It's not 7:30, but it's time to start. Welcome everyone. It's a delight to see so many people out tonight on this chilly winter evening. This is our second Come for Dessert, Stay for Conversation program. And there is a third program on Wednesday, April 5th. This is masterminded the April 5th program by Helen Booth. And it's a program of generations, is that fair to say? With Daisy Baker, Helen, Bob Cheeseman, Tina Trombley, and a yet-to-be-named fifth member of the cast. So that's on April 5th, same time, same place, 7 o'clock for dessert, 7:30 for conversation. So I hope that some of you will be able to come then. It's by reservations only. I mean, the nature of this program is such that we do not want, 50 people. We want to keep it small and on a conversational level. So if you want a reservation for that night, you can tell us before you leave this evening, and you get your name on the list. Well, tonight's conversation doesn't sound quite right. You are a conversation, Esther. Is Esther McWhinnie, no stranger to those who are here this evening. I came here in 1994, stop and think, and I came in June. And about 2 weeks later, there was the annual Presbyterian Church auction. And I thought, the political thing to do is to walk over there to that auction and make yourself known. So, I discovered they're selling sweets, which was no challenge for me. But in small towns, you need to find out, who makes the best pie of the church ladies. So I said to someone, and I think I knew very few people, I think it was Jan Davis, because she was working in the post office then. I had met her, and she was peddling the sweets. So I said, what do I buy here? And she said, oh, you've got to buy Esther McWhinnie's cream puffs. And so I bought Esther McWhinnie's cream puffs.
And you're still here.
And I'm still here. They were wonderful. And then I said, Jan, who's Esther McWhinnie? She's sitting over there. Sitting over on the sidelines. So I went over and made myself known. And I have to say that was a delight that has continued through the years. So, enough of my babbling. We're here to chat with Esther. So Esther, why don't you start out, now I have to get this straight. You were living in Ellenburg, but you were born in Chazy. So why don't you start out and create Esther McWhinnie for us?
Thank you. That's right. I was born here in Chazy, down at the lake. Right.
Oh.
My grandfather had a farm right on the lake shore. And it was back in the days when mother went home to their mothers to have their babies. So my mother came from Ellenburg Center and I was born down at the lake at my grandfather's farm. I'll tell you which one it was in a minute. Alex Bayshard's farm now, if any of you know it, where that is. That was Alex Bayshard's farm. And at that time, well, I didn't know then, but I do now, that there were no cottages or camps along the lake or anything back in those days. But I went back to Ellenburg Center to live. I moved to Chazy when I was 6 years old. My father had a serious illness and had to give up his work. And my father had a post office. He was a postmaster in the same store that his grocery store was in. I remember going in the front door, and you go to the right and you go to the post office, and you go to the left and it was a grocery store. And so I came back to Chazy to live with my grandparents, who at that time had bought a home in Chazy, but they'd sold the farm. And my home, the rest of my life, was across from the railroad track. And so I really could keep track of what was going on at the railroad station. And one of the biggest things I remember about living up there was the time that Mr. Miner died. Which was in 1930. I wasn't too old then. And I could remember all the passenger trains. There were just rows of them, not rows, one right after another, pulling up. And there were these great big cars. Of course, I didn't know the name that they were limousines or what they were then. But I can remember, and the cars had a lot of gold paint on them. Now, this is my remembrance of the procession of cars that came. And they were coming from, I suppose, about New York, Chicago, all over, coming to Mr. Miner's funeral. And that's what I remember first. In school, we were out on the playground, and the school, one of the teachers that was on the playground, now I don't know what her position was, but she had us all come up around her out on the playground, and we stood around a circle, and she told us about that Mr. Miner had died. And that's the end of my story. I don't remember, but I remember us all standing there and listening to her tell us that Mr. Miner had died.
You're talking about being up there across from the station, and the cars are going by. Now, I thought that road wasn't there. You know, the road.
That's right.
So where were they
I was
going?
almost directly across from the station.
Oh, they came to the station.
They came to the station.
Train cars, private
train
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 cars.
car, because I thought you were
The
talking
train
about
cars, yeah,
passenger
the
cars.
trains at the station. And there was one right after another. I can remember standing out on the porch. Now, Mr. Miner died in 1930, and at that time, there wasn't any underpass in Chazy. Route 9 was straight through. And where I lived was the entrance to the road that now goes to the Miner Farm and Scioto and other points out. So we had to move our home. It's a 3-story house, it's still there. And I remember moving that house. It was a contractor from Vermont. We never took anything out of the cupboards. I think we took some glassware out. It seems to me I remember that. But we didn't take the pictures off the wall or anything like that. But we lived right in the house about all the time it was moved. My grandfather and father dug the basement, put a foundation in, and put a new furnace in. And then the contractor pulled our house from where it was, you know where Bill Arthur lives, right along that, and where the road is now that goes to the Miner Farm. Our house, my house, was right in the center of that road. And he pulled the house back and turned it a quarter of the way around so that the front of the house now does not face Route 9 like it used to. It faces the road that goes to the Miner Farm. And, but we lived in it. It was in the fall. And we had a potbelly stove, and I don't know what they call it. It was flat on the top, it had burners. And they put the chimney up in the center of the fireplace. And that's the heat we had in it while we lived in the house and while it was being moved. I think it was, well, I know it was in October because they was moving it on my birthday, and my birthday is in October. And so they had it, but that was our heat. And they moved it right over on top of the new foundation and connected the furnace, and we're all in business again. I don't imagine, now my mother, we lived right in it. Now whether those things would be permissible this day, we'd have to get out of them or not, I don't know. But we lived right in it all the time.
How long did it take to move it?
Well, a few days. I remember coming home from school, and I said, I can't find the back door. But they turned it a quarter of the way around, and it wasn't where it usually was. And my mother's favorite remark said, I was sitting there, and the tree went by the window. But we didn't take anything, I think we did take some glasses off, but we didn't take, I know we didn't take a picture of them. And we ate right there, and I cooked.
It's fantastic.
And yes, it is, that was in
Wow.
1933, 32, 33, 34.
Now, what was your name in Ellenberg, and what was your?
LeBaire,
LeBaire.
My father's name was
The
Homer
grandfather's
LeBaire.
LeBaire?
but my grandfather's name was Arthur Lewis, and this was his home.
This house here,
Yes,
okay, because I don't remember that.
No.
Never came up.
Talking about moving the house, what was it pulled with or pushed with, or how did you roll it? How did they roll it? Horses, tractor,
Must be
people?
horses, I think.
it was tractor. See, I don't know. I'm not sure. I can remember those big planks, there were big things like that they put it up on. What do they call those? Dick, what are those called?
Like this, those big things.
I remember we were upon that and they rolled it back and turned it a quarter of the way around. But we lived right in it. And then, of course, they built the road to the minor farm and to Scioto. And they dug down on Route 9 down the road. And now when we were going to school, there were 2 railroad crossings in Chazy. That was the one on Route 9, and the train also went across the way to the minor farm of Scioto was where the bank is now, the little dead-end road.
Yeah.
And there was another railroad crossing there. So we had to have crossing guards. And the crossing guard that I remember the most was Joe West. He was always there as when we go to school, he was always there going
Well,
there.
did he live in town, Joe?
I don't know where he lived.
But he'd be there for the,
He was there for, I don't know where he lived. Where did he live?
He lives on a ridge. He lives on a ridge.
I don't know where
He
he was.
must have walked.
But he was the crossing guard for
Joe
us
West.
going to school. And of course now it looks like those roads that are on the little dead-end road up to the railroad station were on Route 9.
the
And
crossing was at the end of that road near where Riley Ford starts.
it goes
You
right,
went up there and then cut across.
no, it was all level. That was all
Route 9
level
was
then.
flat.
Yeah.
They blasted it out to put the
Yeah, but I mean,
overpass
the
in.
crossing,
Yeah, but
The
and-
crossing,
high
no, when she
point.
walked to school, she just crossed on Route 9.
yeah. But I mean, I'm asking about the actual place where the crossing was. But you come out.
Just about
in
where
front
it is
of,
now, but now the houses that are on the little road that go to the station now had a lawn. There was a lawn and a sidewalk, that was, we walked on the sidewalk in front of, on the lawn in front of
And
those
then you
houses.
cross. And then you cross. So what Sandy Fillion or Sandy Baker had as a house, the big brown one, was that where the crossing was?
No.
Crossing right where it is now. Right across.
The crossing is right where it is
They
now.
didn't move the track.
They didn't move the railroad track.
No, I'm saying over the railroad track, I can't,
There's another one on Buffalo Street. In that railroad
It
crossing,
will-
there's a road that goes all the way and it comes out to the bank.
Yeah.
It was near
That
where
used to
the,
be,
Oh,
there used
I
to be
know.
another crossing.
yeah, I just
the other
understand
crossing,
that,
yes.
I just cannot
Where,
cross
That,
this
the
one.
little dead-end street that was Sandy Baker's that went up to Sandy Brewer's, I don't even know, I can't remember what they call it now, but that road was never there, that was not a road.
that,
That were,
their
there was no.
front yards were right down to the road.
Came to
The-
Route 9?
Right, so
Yeah.
all those houses that were along there, their front yards were on Route 9. They blasted all that out,
When Route 9 was.
Well, I realize that,
and it was
but
level.
I'm not getting my.
You gotta go.
Where the heck you
Oh.
cross the road? It
Well, it was the same
level,
place,
Well,
George.
right where it goes.
Right where it is now.
Same place.
And those
Oh, now
houses
the
that are on
road
that
goes
road
up.
also, they were on the,
Oh, okay, where the intersection of the
Yeah, they lowered the
railroad.
road to
okay,
go onto the railroad.
I'm sorry.
now they were so near the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
that
I got it.
In order to make a road to get to them, there was a Nazarene church right next to my folks' house, which is not burned, and then there was another house, and Maxwell, my father-in-law, cut the front of those buildings off and moved the front back so that they could get the road in there. And there was a church, he did the same thing to the church. It was a Nazarene church, which is late, is now it's gone. It was
Well,
burned
now,
later.
Esther, when you talk about putting the road in, was it 9 that they put in there, or the one going?
They had to make another road because it was, the road is right where the road is now.
Going out to Minor Farm?
No, that's the one they.
No.
Route 9, right where it is now.
They were putting in Minor Farm Road,
They
for
put
the
in Minor
intersection
Farm.
into Route 9. That never used to be there. To go in Chazy, if you wanted to go to Minor Farm, you went by the road by the bay. Right. There was no,
Yeah.
Right there by Never's.
right by
So
Never.
that's why they had to move your house, so they could get out to the Minor Farm.
Yes.
There were two
Right in
crossings.
the road.
That
That
and they were
house is right in the
putting,
middle where the road was.
making the railroad elevated, putting the road underneath.
Esther, didn't Dickinson's Dairy be the next house beyond you?
Pardon?
Dickinson's Dairy was the next house beyond you, right?
I'm sorry.
Dickinson's Dairy was the big white house beyond, that's burned and gone
It wasn't
now.
behind, it was right next
It
to
was
us.
next door to you.
Right, our
Yeah.
lawns were all one.
Yeah, and after your
And that
house
farm.
was moved, that house still stayed on the corner of the road.
That farm still, but my grandfather's barn that went with it, they moved that, and it's now a house down on the Lake Shore Road. They moved,
Wheaton.
well, you know where Whedons live?
Yeah.
That was my grandfather's barn, and they moved that from there in the village in Chazy all the way down and made a house out of that. But those are, I don't know how they do things nowadays, but
Tear them
we're
down
still
and
here.
rebuild.
Esther, did your grandfather just get told he had to move this house?
Oh, yeah.
And how did he feel about that?
Well, I don't know how to say that.
Well, he
It was
was
just,
a Lewis, wasn't he?
I know that by cutting the road through that land, my grandfather had some land in back of our house and on the barn, and where Bill Arthur's is, Dickinson now, had a barn and their stable, and their land back there. But after the road went through, the Dickinsons and my grandfather just exchanged property so that all their land would be on the same side of the road. My grandfather's would be on one side, and the Dickinsons would all be on the other. I don't know whether it was measured out or something like, but I know the deeds, that was the way the deeds are read, because I just sold that house. And that they, how they did that. And so I used to see quite a lot of the railroad station, because it was nothing between our house and the rail station. I can remember when they were putting dynamiting, they did that a little differently than they do it now. They'd come and tell us that they were going to be blasting and to get off the road, street, and our house would be full of people. Because our house was a 3-story house and there was a window up in the attic, in the roof. And everybody would run to go up to the 3rd floor so we could watch the stones fly all over. And, well, those are the things I remember, how the change in the way Chazy looked when I came to Chazy to live. And I don't remember, none of my family never worked for the Minor Farm or for the miner. So I don't remember any much about Mr. Miner. I remember his funeral, about all those guys. And my mother telling us that Mr. Miner's casket was left out in front of the school. The funeral was in the school, as you know. And that was covered with gardenias. No, I didn't see that. That was a swear. But I think it might be true, because at Mrs. Miner's funeral was in the Presbyterian Church in 1950. And that, I know, was covered with gardenias. It was covered, and the flowers fell right to the floor. And how I'm very sure about that is that I was playing the organ over at the Presbyterian Church at that time, and Mrs. Miner's prodigy, Donald Robinson, that she had brought up a lot. And he was then playing the organ in New York City. And he came up to play the organ for Mrs. Miner's funeral. And Bernard Riley and I sang a duet at Mrs. Miner's funeral. And I can remember standing there, and our choir loft is over in the front of the church and raised higher. And I could open my mouth and you couldn't breathe with the scent of those gardenias. It was just about strangling. I can just remember that just as well. And I'd say to Bernard, how are you going to do this? I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do this. But, so that I remember. But Mrs. Miner's funeral, I don't know anything about Mr. Miner's funeral except the crowds that were on the streets. And I did get to know Mrs. Miner after I was married and was playing the organ in the Presbyterian Church. She had a few pieces that she particularly liked, and if I didn't play them often enough, she'd come and tell me. She'd, you haven't played in the Finlandia for quite a while, or something like that. And looking over, where are you, Madeline? I was thinking of you. Mrs. Miner was one of your Sunday school teachers, wasn't she? I know she was my husband's Sunday school teacher, and my favorite. She always participated in the work of the church there. If the ladies' aid or the ladies' organizations had a dinner or anything, Mrs. Miner used to like to put the silverware away. They would wash the silverware. It was all washed in the kitchen, though, but they'd always bring it in on a table. And I can remember Mrs. Miner sorting it.
Oh, I wish we had her now.
I can remember her doing that. But there were a lot of individual bags that they put the silver in. It was a silver plate.
Didn't she donate that silver?
What?
Didn't she donate the silver to the church?
Mm-hmm. It had PC on it, Presbyterian Church.
And it's disappeared.
And it all disappeared.
Yeah.
There's a few pieces left, but
It's all mixed in with the stainless steel. Nobody separates it anymore.
She always used to sit, going over to help at the luncheons and so on, I used to remember Mrs. Miner sitting there putting the pieces of silver individually into the little bags. And I got to know her through that one. Now to see, how did Chazy look back when I was a kid? We had a lot more stores in it than we do now. There used to be an A&P, Grand Union, IGA, but now we have Stewart's. The A&P store was on the corner that you now turn across from the fire station. It was a 2-story brick house, a big building. The Grange was upstairs. The Grange meeting was upstairs, and the A&P was downstairs.
The kids took over the Grange. All the grown-ups stopped coming, but what was the older couple that always came to Grange?
Pete never wanted to sell.
But
Pete never wanted to sell.
No, it was another,
They were Grange people.
Oh, I know.
Darwin Lapeer.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Darwin.
Up here. And that,
Yeah, Maynard.
I know they, and the Grange was very active. The Grand Union was then a part of what is now the medical building where the Musso's Pharmacy was. And then there was a separate little building right next to what, and they put it all into one building. But there was a separate building there, that was the Grand Union. And across the road from the hairdressers now was the IGA store.
All three at the same time?
No,
They-
the
they-
IGA came later.
Time.
The Grand,
Okay.
the A&P was the first one. Then the Grand Union came. And then the Todrick family opened it.
So there was one at a time, one of those.
Yeah.
Yes. I think maybe the Grand Union was still there when Levi had some of his, when he opened his. And then there used to be a meat market, Neverett's Meat Market. That's across from the bank now.
Used to be buckets.
Hmm?
Were buckets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there used to be a meat market there. And then the post office used to be there. When my father got back to work, the post office was first in the, where he went to work was where Dumar's store is, which is right across from the hairdresser.
Yep.
And then it moved down to the, near the weathercock where the meat market used to be. And then it moved where the,
Store there, right there, by shoes.
where the hairdresser was.
Trans
Yes, so
store.
that moved there. And then it came up to the, where it now is apartment houses next to Stewart's. The post office was up there. And then we got a new one
Yeah.
after that. So it was in quite a few different places. So that was a change there.
Well, was Mr. Sweet the postmaster
That's
for
right.
quite a while?
Yes, a long time.
Going back to these other locations? I mean, it seems like he was
He was there a
around
long
for quite a
time.
while.
I don't remember who was before Mr. I don't remember who was Mr. Who?
Frank Jr. till he died.
Yeah, oh yes, Mr. Junior and Frank Junior was the postmaster. That's right.
And
Before
Trey's
that.
store next to it.
And,
It was
No.
North Store.
I was trying to think of what we did as young people for entertainment. We didn't own any cars or do anything like that. We had church groups and young people's groups. In fact, I was looking at some minutes of the young people's organization and reading some of the notes just to see about what I could think of for tonight. And I noticed that we gave Jim Gagne 15 cents to go buy 3 ping pong balls. I thought that was I saw that in the notes. I thought that was interesting.
Well, in the winter, the girls would get out of school and go home to change their shoes to get their skates. And when they came back, the guys would have the back pond all shoveled off. And then they would put, the girls would sit down and the guys would put the girls' skates on for them. And then we skated until dark.
There used to be a back pond at the
The back
school,
pond,
the
this
old
is back-
pond,
yeah,
as
it's
well
back
as
in
the
the
front
school.
pond of the old school. There was a back pond in the front of that.
That was before Willie's lived.
And that was,
Well, there was a cement block building there that must have been put up later. In my time, I remember seeing there was a block to change the skates, on that old pond.
on the old pond.
Yeah, that block building,
It was a lean-to type thing.
old Leamington neighborhood.
I don't, but,
So it wasn't there earlier, but you're talking
We
about
just
when you
used
go
to-
skating.
that was a skate. I don't know how many of you remember they used to dive off a diving board at the,
In the pool.
on Route 9, that bridge right going through town. They had a diving board.
Underneath it on the west
Oh, down by the,
Yeah.
Into the
Right on the west
So
side.
right up, we had a diving board right there. And,
or like,
Water was clean.
um, Dick, your uncles were the great leaders of the teenagers and so on. They did a lot for us. They put the, I think,
I remember that diving board on Route 9 when I
in the
was
bill, they,
quite young.
and we used to, I can't believe that I ever dove off that diving board into that mud that there is there now.
They used to tell, I forget just who it was, the boys used to get on this little gatehouse up here, back of your house, and dive off from there into the far side of the river. They climb up on that little gatehouse roof
That-
and dive into the river there.
Oh, that was the, I can even tell you who were the best divers in that group.
Russell Trombley, probably. Duffy Foote.
Harrison Wilson was very good at that.
Harrison?
Harrison
Harrison
Wilson.
Wilson, no kidding.
Oh, he was, and, yes, that's what they used to do that. And they used to watch the canoe fights on the river in back of my house. They used to have canoes, and that was great entertainment to watch, 3 or 4 canoes with people in each one to see how well they do. I can remember watching that, and,
they use inner tubes and blow them up on the end of the poles, tie them up to
yeah, to
big
make,
bubbles for the inner tubes, and then
to poke somebody
try
off.
to knock
yeah,
each other
yeah.
off.
And see, you do remember those things too now.
Down Orville Engels let us camp in his little restaurant.
Do you remember Orville Engel and Janie Engel?
Sure.
Mrs. Engel was Mrs. English private
Caretaker, sort of.
attendant.
Yeah.
And Mr. Engel was very good to the young people. At that time, where that garage is now, is now insurance agent, right next to the river, there was a little little restaurant. You could go in and get a soda,
Yes.
ice cream.
Part
And
of the garage.
he used to draw in a lot of sand and dirt along the river, so that those that didn't want to jump into the river from the diving board,
But they made a cement bank down into the river.
that there was, and so that was we didn't get to the lake, but we got
Yeah, we gathered there.
recreation
They put up
right
with it.
at the river. Of course, I don't think any of those things are done now, but.
There's a biblical song about that.
We didn't have any cars to go anywhere.
Esther, these little stone, tiny little buildings near the dam in the river, did they ever generate electricity? I assumed that there were generators in there. and-
That was a pump house. That was a pump
Now,
house,
there's one on your road at the corner,
yes,
and then there's one by the bridge.
going by the bridge. Those are both pump houses.
Now, what did that,
And the one that, by my house,
oh, that opened the dam? to the-
Yes.
it opens the dam and closes it,
I
and
thought they
it
were
it
generators.
provided the water to the school.
It still controls the school
It
pond.
controls the school.
Is that right?
Yes.
That one there, that one that next to.
Were they electric pumps? Yes. In there?
Yes.
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 I know that if they open them in the spring when the water is high, so that it won't flood a lot, and they have an electric equipment on the one down in the village, but they can't always open the one in back of my house until the ice is gone. They can't turn
That looks like
they have to
it's
turn it by
gonna fall.
hand. I know sometimes they go to try it. I don't know that. Also, we always had a little place where we gathered as young people, where the weathercock is now. You could get a hot dog and ice cream and candy bars, and we used to gather there after school. And,
Now, there was a building between Weathercock and Buckets. Was there a business in that?
it was a It was a store. That's where we bought those ping pong balls. And there were apartments in that. There
Now
were,
there, when I came, there was a person down there in the cellar of that barber shop, it seems to be
Yeah.
in my mind there.
yeah, there was, that right, there was a bar, and there were apartments in the back and upstairs. And there was a store. Was there a soda fountain in that?
I don't know, the store I remember was Frank Junior's store down, it was a dry goods store, only he didn't sell, he sold shoes, he didn't sell meat and stuff like that.
I don't remember what was,
Barrels of pickles.
you could, there was things that you could stop and buy, but I have to walk by that on my way to school all the time. So there
Well,
were,
did you have more people in town? I mean, this sounds like a lot of stores for a little community. There must have been more families living in town.
But you didn't have a car to go to Plattsburgh.
You didn't go to Plattsburgh, you stayed local.
That's right.
I know there were an awful lot more, gas stations.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
You could buy gas at
Every corner.
many places throughout town. And now
The cars people didn't have.
Esther, what was Saturday night like in town?
What
Was it Saturday night when everyone came in? Or was it Friday night?
No, I guess I must have stayed home. I don't know as there was a lot. I couldn't tell you. There were a lot of activities, different organizations. Now, there were a lot of home talent plays.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of like pancake suppers, a lot of local activities such as that.
I
There was
was
a
thinking
Grange,
you were the
and
person.
then the kids took over the Grange pretty soon.
Yes, we could go up there.
I was in high school and I was one of the main, you know how they used to have the flag in the middle and the woman on this side and the whole
There-
thing. And the kids, I was part of,
You were part of the Grange, yeah, it was very active, yeah, that was.
Was there a movie
Kids.
theater in town?
so a lot of the people stopped coming.
Yes, you're right.
Was there ever a movie theater in
Yeah,
Chazy?
there was a movie theater here, for a short time. That was,
Up here where the
Where
post
the
office
post
is.
office.
where the post office and the store was there.
Right.
I was a teenager.
And I know,
It was the late 40s to the middle 50s.
pardon?
The post office opened in the late 40s and went up through to the late 50s. And it's where, the movie theater.
Movie theater.
The movie theater, and it's where the post office is now.
Yes, because
Oh, there.
we used to go to the movies, and we enjoyed it much more if there was one man, a young fella there, that enjoyed every minute of the movies. And he sat in the back seat, and he would laugh and laugh and laugh. Didn't matter whether you couldn't help but enjoy it.
Remember
You
who
had
he
to
was?
laugh with him.
You remember who he was? That was Donald
Donald
Morehouse.
Morehouse.
I can still hear him laughing.
He sat in the back, and you just had to enjoy every movie, regardless of what it
There was a
was.
plastic factory in that
What?
theater. There was a plastic factory in that theater one time too. I worked in it. Made cigar tips.
What was that?
After it was this
After
theater.
the theater closed?
Yeah. And
Where the theater was?
Mid-50s.
Plastic factory.
Oh, yeah,
Plastic
okay.
factory in there. Yeah, it's a big plastic factory.
And there was a furniture store in town, right next to where the hardware store is now. Sullivan's had a furniture store there.
You had Charles Furniture.
Huh? And Mr. Childs had a furniture store. That was, in back of the, where the Grange Hall, well, on the corner where there isn't any building now.
Yeah, when you went to the lake.
Yeah, going to the,
Right beside his house.
there was Mr. Childs had a furniture store there. Mr. Childs' son, that's to whom they named the American Legion after his, he lost his son during World War I. And,
Well, there's a plaque upstairs here. But there's a plaque upstairs on the windowsill for that name, for,
Russell Beach.
was presented by the class of 21
Mhm.
to the school.
Mhm.
Right, Fred?
Esther, what about your early years of teaching?
Yes, your
Oh,
kindergarten.
yes, I came over after we were married. I started teaching here. And I,
What year was that, Esther?
what?
What year was it?
I was married in 46, I think I started in 48. I didn't teach the first couple of years after I was married. And I taught second grade at first. And then they were opening a kindergarten here. And I was privileged to be able to open the first kindergarten here. And I had a great deal of cooperation from the school and all the people that were in the school and getting it started. And it was I enjoyed every minute of it. We had individual cots, little cots for each child, and they had to bring their own little blanket we had our own room for the nap time, and it was the first full day school. It wasn't a half day kindergarten, it was a full day kindergarten, and so that's why we had these little cots. And we had our own little room for those, and we could go from my kindergarten. I had a big room, one of the largest rooms in the school was for the kindergarten.
Where was your kindergarten? What's the floor?
It's where the first grade used to be.
Down in the lowest?
No, it was right under the music room, must be on the first floor. It was on the main floor.
Okay, yeah, under the music room.
I just stopped and couldn't think where it was. It was a large room, it was on the main floor. And I think my first class, I had 22. And it stayed about the same. I enjoyed it very much. Mr. Withall was very interested in getting that started after we knew we were going to. And I remember called into the office. He had a catalog, and he wanted to know what I wanted, the equipment I wanted for school. And what he wanted was drums and pounded pegs and anything that was like, but he was very generous and making suggestions, and we were very well equipped. It wasn't all day, and I enjoyed it, and there was a lot of, we had to, even the school, each teacher was, we request that each teacher put on an assembly program. And we even put on assembly programs in the kindergarten. And I had to, like one year I know we put on Tom Thumb Wedding. Maybe I had 2 of those. And then we had a Night Before Christmas. We illustrated the Night Before Christmas. And we had, I enjoyed it very much. And I also enjoyed show and tell. That was a lot of fun. I'll have to tell you one of the best stories of show and tell. It was a little boy had big eyes, and he was saying, "You know what? Miss Quinnie," he used to call me, "Miss Quinnie, you know what? I thought my mother was going to leave us last night. She came downstairs with her suitcase. And you know what? My father picked her right up, and he took her upstairs, and he put her right in his bed. I think she's going to stay." I like that one. And I know there's a a lot of stories to tell about kindergarten. I had one parent that was I didn't think I'd ever get rid of her. It was the first year of kindergarten, and I looked outside, and the room we were all in, and we were all organized and everything, and here, one of the mothers was parading back and forth. I don't think Raina would mind, it was Raina. Her name was Raina. And she was outside, so I went to the door, and she said, "He hasn't cried yet?" I said, "No, Alan's fine, he's fine." And I think I'll stay out in case he does, so I can take him home. I said, "Well, you're welcome to, but I think Alan's all right, he's okay." I looked out again, and she's still outside. So I said, "Well, Raina, why don't you go home?" "I guess I'll have to, he's not to cry." Those they're fun experiences.
I don't know if you, how you
have from the
can
children.
tell it, but the one about, I like the one you told about the little boy and the bad language.
Oh. Well, I had a little that he sure didn't know how, wasn't afraid of using any words he wasn't supposed to. His language was not too good. And after a recess or a noontime program, and he was back in school after the teachers had come complain that he was still swearing out on the playground. I thought, well, I guess I better do something about that. Maybe, I don't know what I'll do. So there was a washroom in the corner of my kindergarten room, and I took the little guy over to the washroom, and I said, "Now, I've got some soap here, and I'm going to wash all of those bad words right out of your mouth. You'll never say them again. I'm going to wash them all right out." And so I did not put the soap in his mouth, but I wanted to, but I didn't put it in. And then I took him by the hand and took him back to his little chair. And he looked up at me and he said, "You son of a..." I walked away.
Was there another little boy that, what was he wanted? You wanted to know if you could have what, was it?
My shoes?
Yeah.
Oh, I never did find out where ended my shoes. There was one, I wore high heels back in those days. And I wore high heels most of the time to school. And the one little boy was always like, "My mother would like your shoes. My mother would like to wear shoes like that." And so we'd talk about it. And he kept this up all the time. So I thought, well, maybe I'll let him take a pair of old shoes home to his mother. And so finally, I said, "Well, you can take this pair home, take this pair home to your mother." And so he came back to school. She didn't like them.
Oh, he brought them back, I hope. He brought them back, I hope.
So, I mean, they're just precious. It was, I enjoyed teaching. After I retired, after I got that one there, and I got Jim, I quit teaching and I went up to Champlain, and I opened the kindergarten up in Champlain. I only stayed a couple months up there, and they had another teacher, and it was a real good time. I enjoyed it, let's put it that way.
What was it about, was it Gray Gables? I mean, teachers could live there, but what were you told?
What?
Gray Gables, that teachers could live there, but what were you?
Oh, yes, when we were I started teaching, I tried to ask to get a room, an apartment in Gray Gables, but I couldn't have one. Only the male teachers could have apartments in Gray Gables.
Can you tell about the faculty rooms, and when you were teaching, did you have to go to a certain room for just relaxation? There were a couple of rooms for the faculty. It seemed like they were...
No, every room in the school over there, the old school, had a separate lavatory for the teachers. There were two doors. There was a door Then there was a space, and there was another door, and then you had your own little washroom. On all the teachers, the biggest, the teachers' room. No, I don't think I ever had to do that.
You didn't leave your room all day?
No. No. I didn't get cooperation from all the teachers because my kindergarten wasn't always as quiet as it were supposed to be. Back when we were going to school, the halls were all very quiet. All well, very quiet. And there was I guess it was a matter of discipline. Well, I'll have to tell you about how I got disciplined. I was in high school. I got my phone call to go to the principal's office. And I got down to the principal's office and Mac was there too. What on earth? And we were criticized for walking up the front walk of the school holding hands. That wasn't a ladylike thing to do. I was in high school. We were in high school.
Who was the principal, do you remember?
Mrs. English.
Mrs. English?
Yeah, we were.
Is she the one with all the keys?
Yeah. We were criticized. But we had, there was a lot of things that I enjoyed as a student in school. There was a lot of discipline, yes. But
You know, we didn't realize it though.
no, I don't think.
You know, that was the way,
It was
we went along.
More
Didn't
formality.
hurt us,
More formality, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe.
but we were kind of proud of it.
Yeah, after we got out.
No, we never minded.
Did you ever have any trouble in school, John?
nothing but tell
See, John and Madeline were in school at the same time I was. Yes, we used to enjoy going over to Great Gables for the Christmas parties and parties when we were teachers. The teachers were all, that's if they had any activities together, we went over to Great Gables for different parties and so on. I guess I can tell about one of the parties I went. Yeah. Well, you know, I played the organ in the Presbyterian Church for 40 years. Can I, is that all right if I tell that?
Oh, do tell that.
And I played, and it was after Mr. and Mrs. Minor was gone. And Mr. Whittle was very attentive about things that were going on in our church. That was the Presbyterian Church where the Minors always attended. And I got to know him through working with him in organizing the kindergarten and all. And we were over at a Christmas party at the Grey Gables. And Mr. Whitall was talking and visiting with me. And he said, Mrs. McWhinnie, how was your organ? And Max says, none of your business. But I also, I guess I was very fortunate in being able to live here, grow up, know everybody.
Esther, what role did you play in the hardware business?
What?
What role did you play in the hardware business?
I just sat back and took in whatever money came in. I left teaching after we got our children, and I just worked in the office. I did the office work there at the hardware store, and separated the nails, and got them in the right places after the kids played in them, things like that. And it was, we had our hardware store open 6 days a week, and I played the organ at church every Sunday, So always had Sunday afternoon off.
Now, when did you build the building that I remember? You know, the hardware store?
The shop.
The hardware store.
No.
Right after Matt got out of the service, he got out of the service in 45. He was overseas for 3 years. And we got out of 45 and we were married in 46. And he started expanding the building. Mac's father came from Canada, from Ormstown, to work as a finish carpenter for Mr. Miner. And he worked at but after the Depression years, and there was a big change-ins up at the miner farm, and he had his choice. They would have kept him on at a very minimum wage, but he decided to go on his own and work on his own. But he could always go back. They always said, you can always come back and use any of the equipment that we have in the minor farm. Told his father that he could always come back anytime he wanted to use the equipment there. But they started contract. Mac and his father liked to contract, to build homes and then sell them. Although they built quite a few a year. It must be, I don't know, 8 or 9. And then some.
Now, when you got married, I just read in some literature we had around recently that it was kind of a special occasion, that there hadn't been that many weddings. Can you expand on that? I mean, really, there weren't that many weddings going on?
Yeah, well, it was, we were married in 46, and the men were just getting back from the service in 45, and so on. And I was teaching in Albany at the time when Mac was discharged, but we were going to get married as soon as he got back, but from Europe, but they couldn't get a teacher down there, so I had to stay down and teach until they got a teacher at Easter time, so we were, and it was the first wedding that had been in the village for quite a while, and thanks to Mr. Green Sr. and the employees up at the orchard, I had a tour of the village in some of the, what was that, command car?
Command car.
Command car, all trimmed up, and many people around because Mac was home safely and it was a wedding, plus the fact that Mac's brother had just died a few months before. He was only 20 and killed him.
Who played the organ?
Pardon?
Who played the organ?
Who played the organ?
Donald.
She got married in the Methodist church.
It wasn't my father. Alice Dickinson played it.
You were married in the Methodist church?
She's Methodist.
She was Methodist.
Her dad converted her.
Is that the town hall we're talking about?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, where I was married.
My father played the organ in the Methodist church as long as I can remember. And then after we were married, I became a Presbyterian, and
We straightened her out.
and they needed somebody to play the organ, so I went into to fill out until they got an organist, and I stayed for 39 and a half years.
She retired once, I remember, she got a briefcase, but then you went back.
Yes, I did.
That happens a lot, Erica.
I remember, I guess, playing for many weddings. I remember playing the organ in the Catholic Church quite a few times for people that I had in school. They asked me if I would play at their wedding. But in the Catholic school at church, I did not know the regular routine of the wedding. But usually there was a soloist that saying it would tell me when to play a song. But I have a little story to tell. About this Gail's wedding. She'd asked me to play her, but I was alone in the choir loft of the old Catholic church, and that was in the back of the church, facing the altar. And Father DeVan had told me, gone over the order of the worship with me, and he had told me when to play, when certain pieces, I had them all marked up, and when three bells rang, I was to play a certain piece. So I heard 3 bells ring, and so I started to play it, and up in the front, Father DeVan was going. So I stopped. I heard another bell ring, I started to play again, and Father DeVan was. So I thought, I'm not making any more mistakes. So I sat there waiting with my music in front of me, waiting. And I thought, I heard 1 bell ring, and Father DeVan was going.
Esther, that happens a lot.
When I moved into the community, there was a sign down at the end of my street, and that's Minor Road and Route 9. And it said, Chazy, a debt-free community, a good place to live. And so I moved in, they took the sign down.
Well, you,
That was Charlie Musso's doing, and they had a men's club, and they put that up with tongue in
They
cheek.
took it down, too.
Yeah. That was, remember Charlie Musso, the pharmacist?
Yes,
He was
yes.
telling me that they put that sign up there, but well, you might know something about that. Dick, were you in the men's club then?
Sandy called
Dick,
and talked
pardon?
45 minutes.
Were you in the men's club then?
I think so.
Yeah, but it was, he said it was kind of semi-serious.
What about, I mean, because during World War II, you talk about a lot of men that were going and stuff, and I like the story you told about the radio and Grandpa at the end of the war.
yeah, that is throwing.
Yeah.
It was we were up at where I lived, there in the corner, Minor Farm Road, it used to be Route 9. And we were out on the porch, and we had heard on the radio that the war was over. And my father got so excited, he threw the radio right on the floor in front of the house. I've enjoyed living in Chazy, and I've enjoyed knowing everybody, and I've enjoyed the work that I've done here. I was not a professional organist of any kind, but I filled the space up there. I remember one wedding that I was to play for over at the church, and she came in with these stack of music. And one piece was to be played when the groom's parents came in. There was another piece that was to be played when the bride's parent walked in. There was another piece to be played, well, for some other reason. Anyway, it was a lot. And I said, well, you know, this is a very small church. I don't know if you can. Oh yes, you can get. It'll be all. It'll be on it. Well, I think they would have had to start back by the school pond in order to get all the music in our little church. But I have a lot of memories about doing things like that in church. I don't know.
Esther, do you remember when the fire department used to have Easter balls?
Oh.
And they had it over at the Catholic Church Hall? And the night that Leo dared you to eat the candle and you ate that, you ate that little bunny candle?
I remember, of course, my husband was a great community. He enjoyed the community and his friends and all. And and with Leo Cody, they were very active in the fire department when they first got the ambulance. But they were never trained. They didn't have to be trained. They were helpers, and they did a lot of help and a lot of good. And they did, but some of the things that they did are just, they were called down to the weathercock one time when the girl had passed out at the bar, sitting on a stool. So the fire department went down and got her in the ambulance, took her to the hospital. They got her to the hospital. They couldn't find anything wrong with her, so they put her back in the ambulance and brought her back to the weathercock and sat her on the same floor.
And the light bulb, where they had to take the light bulb
Oh,
from
they took a light
one
bulb.
room and then go to the next room, put the light bulb in, because there was only one light bulb in
They
the house.
had one
and
light
they
bulb
go
in one
from-
house, and they used to.
And the lady laying in bed, I don't know if she's having children, and with about 4 other kids bouncing around on the bed with them too.
And pancakes all over that.
And pancakes, that's what pancakes all
over
on the bed, yes.
I think still it's hanging in my closet, or folded up in my closet, is a red bra that the fire department gave Mac. They were called to an accident on Russo's Corner, and the people were out of the cars, in the grass and on the sides of the road, and as Mac came up to one of them, she was a woman, and she said, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." So he took out his jackknife and he ripped up her center of her bra, and she said,
Well, the stories are getting better. Don't stop her now.
"I'm an old Chazy citizen."
Well, Esther, thank you a million for sharing your great stories with us. This has been absolutely delightful. We'll bring you back tomorrow. And you were worried about whether you could do this or not? It was okay, wasn't it, Esther?
Yes, it was very easy.
Good. And it was a delight. And a special thanks to Calvin for capturing this bit of history. Some of you may know that he filmed the George Clark program, the first one in this series. If you've not seen it, I think you could buy one, couldn't you, Calvin?
I might be twisting my arm.
Well, we're seeing, and we'll look forward to seeing Esther on TV, and we appreciate what you do to capture North Country history, Calvin. So, thanks everyone for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.